Whether it's cars, comics, video games, or violins, there's a little geek in all of us. It's time to give your geek a voice. It's time for Geek Therapy. Here's your host, Johnny Hamburger.
It's time for more Geek Therapy! You've landed on this station. You've landed on my hour. You've landed on Geek Therapy Radio, and I am your host again for as long as this station will have me. I am your host, Johnny Hamburger. I'm very happy to do so. Very happy to continue this journey with you geeks, and those of you out there who think I'm not a geek. Well, yes, you are a geek. Well, I'm a geek. I didn't mean like you don't think I'm a geek. I am a geek. But those of you who are in your own heads thinking this show does not pertain to me because I'm not a geek. I am a hunk. I'm a suave, sophisticated gentleman who has no geek tendencies. I'm not a dork at all, or you're a lady thinking I am a high-class socialite. There's nothing geeky or remotely nerdy about me. I am all buttoned up. I got it all together on the outside, at least. Let's get real. On the outside, at least. Let me tell you two people, you are geeks about something. I always say this. A guy who might think he's not a geek but is super into muscle cars, you're a geek about muscle cars. Or you're a geek about video games. Or you're a geek about airplanes. Or whatever you think that is not something that's classically geeky. That's your geek thing. There's a little geek in all of us. And you ladies, God knows what your geek thing is. I don't try to get inside your head. I've learned my lesson with that many times. I'm not going to pretend to think I know what you're thinking. But you're a geek about something. You ladies can be geeks about video games just as much as dudes. I seen it. I seen it with my own eyes, girls being geeks about video games. So, doesn't matter what you think about the definition of geek. You are a geek about something. This show is going to be a little bit more packed with juicy morsels of nerdisms. You know, I tend to go segment to segment talking about one specific topic at a time, or that's what I've done. And by the way, this is episode 8. I've made it. 2 months, 1 month, 2 months worth of shows, one show a week. So 8 shows in, and I am enjoying my time with you. I've had one guest on so far, Buddy, and he did wonderfully, and it was a lot of fun, and I do plan on having more guests, but let me let you behind the curtain a little bit. We're 8 shows in. Let me let you behind the curtain a little bit. I want to get, and I'm planning to get, and have started the ball rolling and talking to these people, getting more higher profile guests on the show. But I don't want to start doing that just yet. I'm waiting for the show to get more leverage, get more exposure. I don't want to have some awesome astronaut on here or whoever I'm just rattle off names. I'm not going to do that. But I don't want to have any big names on here. If not a ton of people know that the show exists yet. So waiting for the ball to keep rolling on that. What's the point of having a big name if it doesn't have as much exposure as possible? But on that note, that exposure note, and I put my elbow on the table again. I got to stop doing that. On that note, I am having a blast. Like I said, letting you behind the curtain, I'm having a blast doing this just by myself. It was awesome to have Buddy on. That was an equal amount of blast, but I'm still just having fun, being romantic with the microphone. And I don't mean that in a type of way. I mean, it's me, a microphone, and an antenna blasting that radio, that electromagnetic radiation out into space. Simple, like they did in the 20s. And I don't know how much longer or how many more generations after me are going to get to do that. I love the fact that podcasts are so popular. Of course. I mean, really, let's just be honest here. What I'm doing right here on the air is basically advertising for you to go on the internet and get more content on the internet digitally. Get the podcast. I'm just advertising for the podcast here, basically. Let's get real. But there's something very romantic to me about a microphone going out to an antenna and the electromagnetic radiation going out into the atmosphere, going out into space. I don't know how much more opportunity people who want to do what I do are going to be able to do that. Radio is not going anywhere. We're always going to have terrestrial radio because guess what? I was going to say when the bombs drop. I don't want to be so doom and gloom about that, but natural disasters, radio's still going to go. Your electricity might be shut off. You can't get on the internet. South Park did a whole episode about what we'd be like without internet, but still, the power goes out and there's no TV, there's no nothing, there's no way to get information. Terrestrial radio is still going to be there. This is how you're going to get information. And radio is not exactly the Stone Age. It's not Stone Age technology by any means, but it's not going anywhere. But radio shows, who knows how long, Geek Therapy in 20 years might not be on the air at all. It might exclusively be a podcast, which is just the way of the world now. Of course, there's lots of shows that, very popular, very lucrative podcasts that have never seen a second on an antenna, on an actual antenna. They have not been broadcast in any way. It's all been digital, which is wonderful. There's so much content out there for you to consume. And for me to consume. It's really unfathomable. And a lot of it's really good. There's a lot of just little shows that maybe not many people know of that are exquisite in their content and their titillation. How about those words? So anyways, I said I was going to get to a lot of subjects, and I filled this whole first segment so far with just me unraveling my own nerd brain, which is fine. I get to do that, and I'm having fun doing that. Me, a microphone, an antenna, and your ears. I love that. I am a geek about that. Obviously, I could have just done a podcast, and this show is podcasted, but it's awesome to continue the lineage of broadcasting. Broadcasting. Casting a signal broadly across the land, in the sea, in the space. In the space above us. That's romantic, and I love it. So, we'll get into it. And I guess I'll touch a little bit on my first subject at the end of this segment right here. And that is, just let's flip our nerd brains around because I'm going off on a whole different subject. Gaming PCs. Lots of us love our gaming PCs. I have a gaming rig at home that I have built up, and it's still a beast. I mean, the processor is a few years old at this point. It's an i7 4790K, overclocked modestly to 4.5 gigahertz. It runs just fine. There's nothing wrong with that chip. It's still perfectly viable in 2017. Like I said, it's like 2 or 3 years old. It's fine. And the graphics card is a GTX 980. It's got 32 gigs of DDR3 RAM at 2400 megahertz. It is not a slouch. Even though there are newer processors and newer graphics cards and newer RAM available, I still plan on keeping my rig forever. You can't ask any PC enthusiast, what do you think about those specs? And none of them are going to say, oh, that sucks. No, it's still beast mode, and it's silent. The name of my rig is Demon's Whisper, because it is demonic in its power, and it whispers. You can't hear it. It's mostly fanless. None of the fans spin until it really gets cranking. And even when it does get cranking, it's pretty darn quiet. The leaves rustling outside are louder. But my argument here is I also have a gaming laptop that has slightly less powerful. It's still an i7, much lower wattage, of course. It's a 6700H Q. So 3.5 gigahertz, I think it goes up to. And the graphics card is a GTX 1060. So on paper, it's slightly less powerful than my desktop. Of course it is. And some would argue, why would you want a gaming laptop versus a gaming desktop? Well, here's the thing. For me, at least, if I had a choice, if I had to give up one or the other, I'd give up the desktop. I'd give up my big old gaming desktop rig because I use my laptop 98% of the time. And the laptop does everything that I need it to almost just as capably as the desktop. Really, the only difference is when I render out audio files or render out video files, of course my desktop is going to do it noticeably quicker because it's an entire gigahertz faster. The laptop maxes out at about 3.5 gigahertz on a single core. When all 4 cores are going, it's at like 3.2. Whereas the desktop will just keep churning and burning at 4.5 gigahertz. So yeah, it's going to render things out faster, but I don't care. I use the laptop most of the time. The desktop is really unnecessary to my lifestyle. So that's just my view on desktop versus gaming laptop. Anyways, more Geek Therapy to come. Go follow Geek Therapy on Instagram. It's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. That's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. And my name is Johnny Hamburger. I will be right back with more Geek Therapy. Stay with me. We're going to have a fun show. I'm going to hit a lot of topics. I'm going to hit a lot of really juicy, sink your teeth into the geeky topics. So stay with me. We'll be right back. Oh, well, what noise was that? Welcome back to Geek Therapy. I am Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator for this evening and many evenings prior. Many, like I've been doing this a long time. 2 months. This is episode 8. Having a blast. Let me get my voice down there. Let's see how broadcastery I can make my voice. AM radio makes any voice sound quite a bit more sexy. Is this voice sexy? Well, I have got my coffee. Oh, my coffee in front of me. I am a slight geek about coffee. Me and my compadre over here, Eric Sharp, we are a couple of fancy boys when it comes to coffee. And this is a fairly recent development. I've been grinding my beans around here. Oh, jeez. The phrases that come out of my mouth. I've been grinding my own beans around here for probably a year, maybe? A year or so? And Eric Sharp, I've gotten him into it. And we have a well-stocked supply of whole coffee beans. This is iHeartMedia / Starbucks now, basically. Not really. I don't know how legally, if that's hot water I'm getting into. We're just iHeartMedia. I'm making a joke. Lighten up! We're basically running a coffee house up here on the 5th floor. So we have this virtually infinite supply of coffee beans that we just keep buying these beans. Like, oh, let's try this. And then we compare flavor notes with each other. What? We don't know what we're talking about. I know that I like dark roast coffee. And that's... Actually, I'm not doing dark roast right now. I'm just regular Dunkin' Donuts, medium, plain Jane coffee beans. And here's what we have realized, and this is something my dad's realized and many other people have realized. The best go-to coffee bean just for daily consumption, the best all-around plain old coffee bean is Dunkin' Donuts medium roast. That's all you need. That's where you start. For a lot of people, that's where you finish. But so right now, tonight, I am drinking my Dunkin' Donuts medium roast, and I've got my half and half in there, whisked to perfection. I whisk it, and I get it nice and frothy, and then I pour... There's sugar in the half and half as well. And then I pour the coffee down into that froth, and Jiminy Christmas. Jiminy Christmas, it is delectable. There's something, I should start recording, video recording these Geek Therapy sessions. I've thought about it. I've thought about bringing you another level into geek therapy by setting up a camera and making that the podcast. I'm going to take a sip of coffee live on air. Holy moly, that's good. I need to whisk it up a little bit more. Anyways, bring a camera in here, let you see. And what I'm getting at is, I apparently use my hands a lot when I talk, especially when I'm getting going about something. Several people have pointed this out to me. Well, several. One mostly has made it a point to stick in my craw about it. I use my hands a lot, and I am not Italian. I am not an Italian. I'm not Italian. I might be a little bit. I certainly wave my hands about. I get very passionate when I talk. Probably a good reason why I decided to get behind a microphone. To earn my cheddar. I'm just a little mouse going after his cheddar, and it's behind this microphone. So, great. I've wasted enough time with this segment talking about that nonsense. Well, actually, I talked about being a coffee geek, and I am a coffee geek. I've stirred this coffee. Let's take another sip. Please don't change the station. This is not the sipping coffee show with Johnny. This is Geek Therapy with Johnny Hamburger. Here's a sip. Dear Lord. Well, I know if radio doesn't work out, I can be a barista. So let's get into an actual topic. And again, you're going to have to flip your brain around. We're changing gears. We're changing gears because now we're going to talk about a car. And that car, I found it fascinating, was the new BMW m550d. It's a quad turbo. And the reason why this is interesting to me, I don't give a rat's fanny about BMWs. I don't give a rat's fanny about Mercedes. I really don't give... Well, okay, I'm an Audi fanboy. Volkswagen Audi fanboy. That's all I've grown up with. If you've listened to recent podcasts, recent shows, you know that I've grown up with mainly Volkswagens. So, I'm partial. Anyways, this BMW, not to say that there aren't some Volkswagens that suck, and I will tell you right now that Volkswagens, I don't care what Volkswagen it was, Volkswagens from the early 90s to the mid 2000s were terrible cars, and I'm a fanboy. I get to say that. I love Volkswagens. I've lived with Volkswagens my entire life. That span of time between the early 90s and 2009, I'm just going to say, do not buy Volkswagens of that era without doing plenty of research first. Timing chains, first and foremost. Timing chains were very expensive to replace. If they even went to their designed failure mileage, they're just the electrics. The main thing about Volkswagens of that era are the electrics. I don't want to think about it. I used to deliver pizza in a 1994 Volkswagen Passat. In the number of times it left me stranded in the rain, running around apartment parking lots, trying to find the apartment, soaking wet. Volkswagens and Audis of that era, terrible. Trash. Like the new Beetles when they came out in 1999 or 1997, I think, 1998. Terrible. And I love Volkswagens, and I will never not drive a Volkswagen or, God willing, Audi. I've got an R8 on the list. I'm going to let that out to the universe right now. Somebody give me an R8. 6-speed manual, please. I don't want the paddle shift. Let me row my own boat like God intended. Sadly, that's becoming increasingly more rare. The manual transmissions. When I bought my last vehicle, the salesman asked me several times. He's like, "You do mean the manual, right? Like the 6-speed manual transmission, 3 pedals, clutch, brake, and gas. That's what you want, right?" I was like, "Yes." "How many times?" He's like, "Because nobody comes in here asking for a manual anymore. You're the only person in the last 3 months who's specifically requested a manual transmission." Like, that's what am I wasting my time for on a car with? of this caliber if it's not going to be a manual? Of course, if it's going to be a pickup truck, I want an automatic, or a van, I want an automatic. But no, it's a coupe, manual. Get your ass in gear and get me a manual. Okay, it didn't quite go down like that, but I wanted a manual, and he was bewildered that I wanted a vehicle with a manual transmission. I digress. Don't buy early 90s to mid 2000s Volkswagens. They're garbage. Everything after 2009, great. They made some very key changes to their engines and electronics after 2009, and they are awesome. I've had mine for 3 years, and I got it used. I've got a 2010. I haven't had... Well, I had to do some preventative things to it, but it's been the best car I've ever had. It turns over. Even like the preventative stuff I've had to it, the car never stopped working. It never left me stranded. It gave me plenty of warning, like, hey, dummy, change this thing out. Okay. But it's never left me stranded. The air conditioner still works, for God's sake. The air conditioner in the Volkswagen still works here in Texas. And I say here in Texas because they're built in Bavaria, or they're designed in Bavaria in Germany. And they, for the longest time, VW and Audi couldn't get through their heads that, hey, we have other markets in which our crappy, I almost said the S word, our crappy little AC compressors aren't going to work. Like Texas. So they put beefier compressors in there, beefier components of the AC, and my AC still blows freezing cold. It's amazing. 105 degrees outside, ice cold AC. So, back to this BMW in the minute I have left in this segment. The BMW m550d is the most powerful six-cylinder diesel car in the world. It's limited to 155 miles an hour in a diesel. It's got something like, what is the output? It's got 394 horsepower and a peak torque of 760 Newton meters. I'm not going to do the conversion on that. It's a lot of torque. Diesels are always known for torque. They're high torque. I had a diesel Jetta, and that thing felt like it could pull a house. It was slow. Diesels don't usually have that much horsepower. They're known for the torque. They're known for hauling stuff. So this diesel BMW does 0 to 60 in like 4.4 seconds. Blah, 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 all those nerdy specs. Here's why this is most interesting. This comes in the wake of Volkswagen's Dieselgate. And diesel cars all over the world are being increasingly restricted and even outlawed in some places. Some towns, you can't register a vehicle if it's a diesel. Diesel still has diesel has come a long way in cleaning up emissions. And diesel's always got an amazing gas mileage. But so for BMW to put out this powerful of a diesel right now, and this motor still gets like 40 miles to the gallon. It will destroy Ferraris, and it still gets 40 miles to the gallon. That's amazing. But diesels might be on their way out as far as passenger cars are concerned. So that's interesting that BMW chose to go this route. I'm not interested in BMWs. If you want to give me an M5 with a 6-speed manual transmission, I will drive it like a Yabo for a while, have my fun with it, give it back. I don't want it. I don't want to own it. I don't want the maintenance of it. I don't want the image of it, if I can be frank. Although around Houston, the people who are the biggest D-bags, usually in Mercedes. I'm saying that. And if you're driving a Mercedes right now, there's a stalk on the left side of your wheel. That's the turn signal. That's how you tell people when you're changing lanes. I am being salty. I'm being a salty, sassy boy right now. You're listening to Geek Therapy. There's more to come. Go to Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. That's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram, and send me your hate mail. Send me your hate mail, Mercedes drivers who don't know what turn signals are. GeekTherapy@iHeartMedia.com. That's GeekTherapy@iHeartMedia.com. I would like an SLS, though. Those are pretty sweet. More Geek Therapy to come. I'm Johnny Hamburger. Oh, jeepers creepers. How can I have forgotten Well, I didn't forget this story. I've just kind of been putting it off. And I guess I can put it off to the third segment, which we are in, which I am Johnny Hemberger, and I am with you, your mental curator, still for the evening, for the remainder of this hour. The subject I'm getting onto right now is I don't think I've touched base with any of my medical nerds, medical geeks. I've always said that in another life, if my brain had been wired just slightly less ADHD, or whatever excuse I'm making for myself right now, which will become apparent in a moment, if my brain wasn't wired the way it is, if one little switch had just been flipped, one little bit of information in my DNA was flipped, which I'm not sure how much sense that makes, but if I was a little different, I think I would be a doctor. I find medicine and the whole medical field very fascinating. The human body, very fascinating. I like, lots of geeks are problem solvers. We like to tinker with soldering irons, and my brain's just one switch away from that soldering iron being a scalpel, I think. But I am not asking for volunteers to do some heart surgery upon. I think that's still illegal in this country. Anyways, this story is amazing. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, which is why I'm bringing it to your attention on this show, which is what shows are meant to do, and that is an artificial womb. We have been testing with success an artificial womb. And I use my hands so much when I talk that my watch just said, "Keep it up, you've been walking for 26 minutes. No, I've been sitting my fanny in this chair talking. So anyways, this artificial womb is amazing. They've been testing it on a goat. All the images and videos I've seen, it's a goat inside this basically Ziploc bag with tubes hanging out of it. It's amazing. It's horrifying, but it's amazing. The first thing I thought of was, in the Matrix, the humans in those tubes with all the tubes hooked up to them just being used for energy, which doesn't make sense. You want to go a whole show on why the Matrix doesn't make sense? We can do that. Using humans as batteries, that's ridiculous. It would require so much more energy to keep them alive than the output of their body. Blah, blah, blah. You'd get it. It's dumb. But it's an awesome movie. It's an awesome trilogy, I would dare to say. The first movie was great. I enjoyed the second movie also. Second movie was awesome. So this artificial womb is amazing and horrifying. Overall, it's amazing. The joke is that it's horrifying, but in all seriousness, artificial wombs are going to give premature babies a much better start in life. The amount of diseases and abnormalities and dysfunctions and handicaps that these artificial wombs may be able to prevent, it's going to be just a new dawn of humanity, the thousands of lives it's going to save, the thousands of lives it's going to improve for these little preemie babies. I had a dream about a preemie baby once. I had a dream that it was my preemie baby. I don't have any kids, but I'm going to tell this story because it's sweet. The story is I walked up on a little preemie baby in its incubator, and I knew it was my son in there. And the little preemie baby looks over at me and reaches out his hand and puts his tiny little fingers on my fingertip and says, because he's speaking in my dream, he says, "Hi, Daddy, I'm Malcolm." So, if I have a son, it's probably going to be named Malcolm. If I have a daughter, it's probably going to be named Malcolm. Anyways, so yeah, premature artificial wombs. That's amazing. That's so amazing. Go science. Go medicine. That's awesome. I'm so stoked about it. Even though it looks horrifying, I know how good it's going to be for humanity. So awesome. God bless those doctors. That's amazing. Now, flipping our nerd brains again. Let's talk about some gaming. No, not modern gaming. I was going to say a true geek only likes vintage gaming. That's not true. A true geek can like whatever he or she wants. I have a soft spot for vintage gaming. So this next story is just... Why do I get so excited about these things? It's stuff that nobody else would even think about or consider. But I read these things and I grin ear to ear. It makes me so happy to contemplate and think about. So those of us old enough to remember, and I say old enough to remember, like people 10 years younger than me don't know what a Game Boy is. Yes, everyone knows what a Game Boy is. And most people know what Kirby's Dream Land is. Or whatever the first Kirby game for Game Boy, which is amazing. Do you remember it? Picture in your mind the first Kirby game for Game Boy that even to this day looks good, even though it's just monochrome. It's just 4 shades of gray or puke green, depending what Game Boy you're playing on. The OG Daddy Mac Game Boy or the Game Boy Pocket is grayscale, better grayscale. Actual grayscale. Anyways, the first Kirby game, wonderful game, widely regarded by many to be one of the best video games, period, of all time. I'm not sure if it's in the top 10 or anything like that, but very good game. Probably one of the top 10 Game Boy games, I would imagine, on some lists. Anyways, the interesting thing about that is the guy who developed the game, the guy who programmed the game. Oh, what is this? I forget his name. I'm gonna mutilate this because it's Japanese. Masahiro Sakurai. I'm just gonna call him Sakurai from now on. But Masahiro Sakurai, the guy who programmed the first Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, he did so on a Famicom programming kit, developer's kit, and he was 20 years old. And this is why I'm not a programmer, but I do have a Commodore 64, and I have some appreciation for the amount of time that goes into coding, even in the basic language. Not even talking about any of the other programming languages, but basic. Anyways, Sakurai programmed the entire Kirby's Dream Land not using a keyboard. He did not have a keyboard to work with because the Famicom development kit was not compatible with a keyboard. So he programmed the whole game using a mouse ball or a mouse trackpad, using a mouse trackball, which is, for those who don't know, it's a mouse that just is stationary and has basically a pool ball sticking out the top of it. Like a billiards ball sticking out the top, and you just rotate that around to manipulate the cursor on the screen. He used that with an on-screen keyboard to program Kirby's Dream Land. And some of you are thinking, why is that? That's not, who cares? There's so much typing. I'm going to bend the thing down so you can hear me typing. There's so much of this in programming. And this guy, all those keystrokes he just did, moving the mouse over the virtual keyboard. Could you freaking imagine the amount of time it took to program an entire game using a trackball and an on-screen keyboard? But here's the kicker. Kirby's Dream Land was mind-blowing when it came out. It was such a smooth game. It was not choppy. The graphics were great for what it was, and even today, it's a beautiful masterpiece of a game. And that guy just did it with a trackball. Even further of a rub, he did this when he was 20, and he just thought that's the way it was done at the time. I'm sure he was familiar with using keyboards, of course, but I guess he just thought that where he was at HAL Laboratories making the Kirby games and Smash Brothers and all that stuff. At the time, he just thought, I guess that's just the way we do it around here. We can't use a keyboard for some reason. So he made that amazing game using an on-screen keyboard and a trackball. Is that not amazing for you vintage gaming nerds out there, or any programmer, anybody who's ever worked with code? Wow. That's crazy. So anyways, we'll be back with more Geek Therapy, more segments. Oh, we're already in the fourth we're already going to be in the 4th segment. I think this is a fun show. This is one of my favorite shows so far. Lucky number 8. Or was that 7? I'm saying lucky number 8. I like this show. I like just being me with you guys. I'm having a lot of fun. My name is Johnny Hemberger, still your mental curator for this evening. Send me an email, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. That's geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. Go to the Insta. Go check out my Insta, mister or ma'am. Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. That's Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. I'm Johnny Hemberger, and we will be right back with more GTR Geek Therapy Radio. Final segment of GTR number 8. I'm Johnny Hemberger, coming to you live, recorded from the iHeart Studios in downtown Houston, Texas. And by downtown, I mean the Galleria. An opening statement ripe with misinformation. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. This is going to be a shorter segment because I've chewed up so much time in the first 3 segments talking about good stuff. Like I said, this is number 8, GTR number 8. Get the podcast. That's where it's out. That's what it's about nowadays, is the podcast. All the youths talking about their PCs. Podcasts, not their computers. Can I do one intro right, please? Please, can I do one intro right? All right, so I haven't bought a video card in a while, a GPU for my PC. Part of me, well, let's just be honest, I'm probably going to get a 1080 Ti. Let's just be real. There's only one rub with that. There's only one caveat to getting a GTX 1080 Ti. And that is this. That is as follows. $700! People spend less than $700 on their entire gaming rig. It's a stretch. If you know how to do it, you can build an awesome gaming rig for $700 total. But anyways, the GTX 1080 Ti costs $700. And to be frank, even though I'm Johnny, to be Johnny, I don't want to spend $700 frivolously. Because guess what? The only game that I play, other than Super Nintendo emulators and Nintendo emulators, which require nothing, the game that I play the most these days is Rocket League. Rocket League will run decently on integrated graphics, modern integrated graphics. You got to pull the settings down a bit, maybe go to 720p, maybe lower, but you can still play Rocket League fluently on very minimal hardware specs. So the idea of me justifying spending $700 on a graphics card, not something I can chew on right now. I will not forgive myself if I did that. Also, I want to see what AMD is going to release. AMD has been promising Vega for quite a while. And if it's anything like Ryzen, it's going to be an amazing deal. Well, anyways, AMD has done something that I don't know if AMD's done this in the past. I knew that NVIDIA had done this. They basically put 2 GPUs, 2 graphics chips on one card. But AMD's doing that now with their latest Radeon Pro Duo graphics card. 32 gigabytes of VRAM. 32 gigabytes of video RAM on one card. This thing is crazy. This thing, it's going to be a beast. Who is it going to outperform the 1080 Ti? Who knows? I do know that it's going to cost $1,000, which with video cards, yeah, that's That's up there. As far as consumer grade stuff is, $1,000, that's pretty much top tier consumer. What is the Titan for NVIDIA? I think it's $1,200. Maybe it's around $1,000. It's around there. Point is, around $1,000 for consumer grade graphics cards. That's top of the line right there. So, but this Radeon Pro Duo is $1,000, whereas the 1080 Ti is $700. So I should hope that it would outperform. One reason I am not a fanboy of AMD or NVIDIA, I have used mostly NVIDIA graphics cards in my builds recently because I like the GeForce experience. And I also have bought into the NVIDIA ecosystem. My tablet is an NVIDIA Shield tablet. The first one, not the K1. It's got the K1 chip in it, but it's not. It's the first generation. It's a little better. It's a little better. So I've got the NVIDIA Shield tablet. I've got the NVIDIA Shield handheld, which I don't really use that much because I got the tablet. And I've got the NVIDIA Shield TV. Fully invested in the NVIDIA ecosystem. So I like the GeForce experience. I like that I can play my PC games on my tablet anywhere in the world. Latency be damned. You can do it. It's just, I wouldn't play Rocket League over a Wi-Fi connection from my host PC. Like, let's say I was in Germany on a train or something and I wanted to play Rocket League. I wouldn't link up to my computer back in Texas and expect to play it with any reasonable success. No. If you got it even running, the latency alone would make it unplayable. You hit the throttle and then 1 second later your car starts moving. That's unplayable. So anyways, AMD's new graphics card looks awesome. $1,000, huh? 32 gigabytes of RAM. This thing better make you pancakes in the morning after you kick it out of a... This thing better make... Let's try that again. Yep. That was reverse. This thing better make you pancakes in the morning after you kick it out of bed. Maybe it's going to be so good you don't kick it out of bed. Why would you be sleeping with a graphics card? But I guess if you spent $1,000, I was about to go to such a bad place with this. So I'll take the high road and say that if you spent $1,000 on a graphics card, you might want to snuggle up to it, keep it safe. And in the wintertime, knowing AMD's stuff basically becomes, well, popularly, as legend holds, you basically turn your PC into a flamethrower using an AMD card. They get hot and they expel lots of hot air out into the room. So anyways, you can go for your gaming. Let's say it's the wintertime and you've got this new Pro Duo and you've been playing on it for a few hours. I can't play for that long. Like I said before, I maybe go a couple hours max in my gaming sessions, maybe, if I got the time. Still, 2 hours is a lot to spend sitting down in front of a screen. But I know a lot of you people out there do it for 12 hours at a time. God bless you. If you can still function in society and add some goodness to the world and still play games for 12 hours a day, God bless you. Anyways, bring this graphics card into your bed, keep you nice and warm and toasty at night in the wintertime. That's it for Geek Therapy. I love you all very much. Like I say at the end of every episode, please value yourselves. You are better and more valuable than you tell yourself you are. So start telling yourself that you're worth even just a little more than you think you are. You are worth more than you think you are. To me, to everyone around you, even despite mistakes you've made, even despite wrongs done to you, you are so valuable to the world. Okay? I love you. Let that sink in. I love you. Not just me. Lots of people love you. You may not think it or see it all over the place, but just get out there, ask around. People love you. You're valuable. I love you. Thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio, GTR number 8. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Send me an email, geektherapy@iheartmedia.com. That's geektherapy@iheartmedia.com, and the Instagram, Geek Therapy Radio on Instagram. Like I said, I'm Johnny Hemberger. Peace out. See you next week, my geeks.